but what are some ways that we can delve into safely feeling emotions? So let's discuss that a little bit. So here's the beginning of a guide of emotions. We've seen this before. This is Plutchik's Wheel of Emotion. And the reason why I really like this is because it talks about different ranges of emotion and different intensities of emotion. So this is, it has the negatives, it has the positives. The more intense emotions are toward the center of the flower, which he just was really clever how he visualizes this. But also as you move away from the center, the emotions become more calm, less energy. So you could also think of the center as high energy emotions. And then, although I don't totally believe this, but it's one way to interpret it. As you move out, the emotions become more transmuted. I don't totally agree that because you can have really strong feelings of love, for example. So this isn't a perfect metaphor here, but the reason why I like this is that often whenever I've worked with people, how do you feel right now? I feel bad. Okay, that's a good place to start. How do you feel bad? What are some of the emotions you feel? And sometimes, especially whenever we're dealing with pain or no pain, we get into this polarized thinking of things are either bad, I feel shitty, I feel awful, I feel fearful, I feel anxious, or nothing, like, or neutral, or you discount the range of positive emotions that you can feel. And so even just starting to pay attention to the gradations of emotion is really useful for not only understanding what patterns are coming up. For instance, is this rage or is this anger? Is this annoyance? Am I labeling annoyance as anger? Or do I have mighty, like thundering rage, but I'm not acknowledging it and I'm just saying I'm annoyed and I'm not being true to myself because I'm sort of whitewashing my own emotions. People do either thing, they're different people who interpret these in different ways. And that's one of the reasons might be, for instance, as someone said earlier on this call, that certain types of emotions were allowed to be expressed in their families of origin or not. If you grew up in a family that didn't encourage emotional expression, or men especially often aren't encouraged to experience or to express emotions, there might be you might have to work at feeling these different ranges of things and recognizing them. So one of the first things I really like about this is just focusing on the range of emotions. What this also means is whenever you feel better, whenever you have some relief, also focusing on the gradations of positive emotions. What is it I feel right now? Do I feel trust in my body that I'm going to be okay, even if I'm in the middle of a flare? Do I feel acceptance that this is what it is right now? I'm going to breathe through it because tomorrow I know the flare will be over and I'll feel something less. So I think one of the other reasons I bring this up is because, and this isn't my thought, but the body is also acting as sort of a compass. Emotions have a reason for being there, and they're typically telling us that we don't like something or we like it. So with pain, it's pretty obvious. We don't like pain. So we typically experience a lot of the negative emotions whenever it comes to pain. But also, there are patterns that come up that aren't just about the pain. It's about the meaning of the pain that's coming up, or the meaning of the situation that's in front of us that's stressful. And this is where, these different gradations of emotions really come in useful. So we'll return to this a few times. And just the reminder, dealing with emotions is an inevitable part of dealing with pain because pain is fundamentally aversive. It always has a negative affective component, always, because that's part of the protective mechanism. So that means that emotions will always be coming up with pain, which is one of the reasons why pure distraction, I don't think pure distraction approaches will be universally useful. At some point, we're going to need to deal with the emotions underlying pain. And that's one of the reasons why I want to talk about this more today. So I mentioned this idea of emotions as a compass, and they're part of our motivational systems. They're useful, they have intelligence, they direct us toward goals, things that we like, things that we don't like. They reflect how aroused we are, how much energy we have in us. Are we angry? Are we sad? So for instance, anger and rage have more stronger physiological arousal signatures associated with them, whereas sadness has a lower arousal signature. They influence how we act. Are we moving towards something that we like, or are we avoiding it? And also, most importantly, they encourage new learning. What sense are we making of the world? So this is one of the reasons why they really are a form of embodied intelligence. And to be honest, there is one of the people who, there are actually two different people. And actually, Vlad, could you read, because I'm about to go into this, could you read, there are two questions that we received about thoughts and emotions and when to use different strategies.
Okay, so there's actually a couple that talk about it. One was, I've heard it said that you need to challenge your brain audibly and forcefully before a pain flare to not act up, that you're safe and not in danger. But once it happens, you need to welcome the pain and emotion and not resist it and let it pass like a cloud. If you resist it, it will persist, and what you embrace, you will erase. Is this good advice? There's another one that had a bit of a focus on journaling, and this one asked, do you recommend journaling to get in touch with repressed emotions? If so, how? Is it wise or unwise to use journaling or other methods to get in touch with emotions while you're in a pain flare?
Okay. So I'm gonna go to those, I'm gonna touch on those in various points throughout this. So we're gonna return to those because I'm going to explain why it seems to be conflicting advice to both distract and pull away from something and then go into it. And also, what are the roles of emotions here? So let's keep those in mind. What I've already discussed is this idea that emotions are naturally related to reward and aversion, safety and threat. And so you can think of them sort of as on this spectrum. One of the ways, in a sense, the thoughts are the interpretation. Is this rewarding or is this aversive? Is this safe or is this a threat? So there's always an interaction between the thoughts and emotions here. And one of the things that we'll be dancing around and exploring a bit here is how different people trained in different ideologies think about this, because it also has to do with the training of the person. Were they trained in CBT? Were they trained in more emotion-focused therapy? That impacts what kind of advice they're more comfortable giving. So we're going to dance around to this. This is also an explanation that it's not just do you feel safe or do you feel threatened? How aroused is your nervous system? So this is another way of visualizing something that probably a lot of people on this call have seen before, but it's a new way of seeing it that helps make sense of, you can be highly aroused and happy, highly aroused and fearful. One of my favorite examples of this is that if you look at the physiological state of someone who is anxious and someone who is really excited, like just really excited and pumped for something, they have the exact same physiological state. The difference is how they're attributing this physiological state. In one case, it's excitement. I'm so pumped to give a talk to 50 people who are passionate about what I'm passionate about. or I'm so pumped to take out my new dog for a walk and create a bond with it. Whatever it is just, you can just palpably feel the excitement in your body. That physical excitement, if it were in a situation where you're interpreting fear or you're seeing it through a lens of anxiety, is a bad thing. It's experienced as a bad thing. So you can have the same exact physiological state with a positive or a negative frame placed on it, and it completely transforms the meaning that you give to that experience. What this says is that there is nothing inherently wrong with high arousal. It's the high arousal with the negative frame that creates the fight flight mentality. This is a little nuanced there, because sometimes it's okay to feel excited and to feel pumped and to feel really enthusiastic about something, and you have high sympathetic arousal. Yes, it is possible. I don't know. It's possible that you can have high sympathetic arousal and little pain. So one of the reasons I'm bringing this here is just to bring in this extra idea that it's not just my nervous system is amped up, this is bad. It's more about what meaning are you finding in this situation? Do you have a high nervous system arousal, and do you feel safe? Do you feel excited? Or is there fear and anxiety there? And actually, I want to jump to something else about fear versus anxiety, because this came up in a circle the other day. These are very similar emotional states with different implications for pain. And this is one of the other reasons why I have that flower there, because it's helpful to discriminate what fear means versus anxiety versus sadness versus anger. And sort of this is an attempt to explore it a little bit. Both fear, this should say fear and anxiety, but also pain. That's actually an accurate statement there too. There are types of negative emotions. Both fear and anxiety come with elevated physical arousal. They both feel physically uncomfortable, and you feel them in different parts of your body. Both are associated with either the presence or the anticipation of danger. And they might have feelings of nervousness, uneasiness, or dread. If you look at the very bottom, what is the difference? Fear is whenever a threat is present and identifiable. There's a specific cue that evokes it. There's a cause-effect relationship that you can see. If I move this shelf because I have fibromyalgia pain right now, it's likely going to hurt and I might be on my back for a day or two. Fear is a situation-specific phenomena. Anxiety is a different state. Anxiety is whenever the potential threat is anywhere around you. So fear is, I'm fearful of this specific thing, this specific situation, this specific possibility. There's a cause-effect relationship there. Anxiety is whenever you don't know what could cause pain next. So you're going to interpret everything as potentially fearful. Everything is potentially dangerous. So there's a difference there. And the reason why I'm bringing this up is there's utility in being specific about what these things mean and what their differences are, because with anxiety, and I think that anxiety is more of a, with fear, the event happens, it either does or doesn't cause pain and it's over. But with anxiety, it's never over. And that's why I feel it's more insidious. And this is why so for example, with anxiety, you're constantly sort of surveilling the environment, seeing what could be a threat, and you never know it could be a threat. You never know what could cause pain. You never know it could make pain worse. You never know if, in the next few hours, you're going to do something where the symptoms change even more. And that's why anxiety is a bit different. And then let's see. the reason why I bring that specific difference up between fear and anxiety is that that's an example of how you have two different emotional states that are leading you to act in different ways. And in all these situations, there's some sort of intelligence there that we're getting at. Fear is an intelligence about a specific situation, a specific person even. If you feel fear about an interaction with a person who makes you feel unsafe, that's something important. There's an intelligence to that you can explore. If you say, I have anxiety about dealing with this coworker, that doesn't lead you to a useful action. Conversely, if you're talking about anxiety, what problem is in the anxiety trying to solve? The anxiety is about the fear of uncertainty. So I know I'm switching up the terms a little bit, but is actually one of the most accurate things I could say. It's not anxiety about the things that are actually happening. It's about the unpredictability, the uncontrollability, and the uncertainty that you're facing. So in that situation, by looking at, okay, I have this emotional state, it feels like fear or anxiety. But whenever you accurately label the emotion there, you're then able to draw different conclusions. If my state right now, my negative emotional state, is primarily about this specific person or place or thing, avoidance makes sense there. You know, in the sense that the situation starts, it ends, it's over. In the situation for avoidance, you can avoid as much as anxiety, you can avoid something as much as possible. But if your anxiety is about an overall set of possibilities, you cannot avoid enough to reduce that anxiety. Let me see if I can explain this in a slightly different way. With anxiety, the feared stimulus is the unpredictability, the unknown. If that is the case, then the most effective way to deal with that anxiety is then to work on your thoughts, your expectations, your mental model of what's possible to happen, your hypervigilance of your physical state. So I bring this up as sort of these nuanced examples of ways that very similar emotions can lead to different types of reasoning to try to understand the intelligence behind them. Because one of the things that, even though pain evokes a whole lot of negative emotions, what we know is that every emotion is there for a reason. It has an intelligence. It conveys some type of information that's useful. Otherwise, it wouldn't be coming up. Maybe it is, I see a pattern that I recognize that's dangerous to me. Maybe it is, I'm not sure what's happening, and not knowing what is happening makes me feel unsafe. It could be a lot of these things. So we can either ignore the emotions and deal with the consequences, or we can learn to become more comfortable with these messages that the emotions have to tell us. So this brings me to something that is brought up in a few of the questions for today. Some people say, whenever you have emotional or sort of pain-related thoughts, to use distraction, to essentially reframe, change your perspective. That's the way to go. And don't interact with the emotion. The fear is illogical, so just don't interact with that level of it at all. So there are some people who get that advice. That advice is out there. That advice is part of the pain reprocessing therapy approach, for example. And yet, sometimes that approach works. Sometimes there's still emotions, heavy emotions that come up. And so what do you do then? And implicitly, one of the reasons why I've put a lot of emphasis on this presentation today on emotions is because for people who habitually use distraction, disengagement from the thoughts, reframing, all of these techniques, there are still these emotional states that come up. And so how do you deal with them? So I really want to look at that closely today. One of the reasons why these two approaches are not mutually exclusive, is you have to go back to the basis of sort of cognitive behavioral therapy. For people trained in the cognitive behavioral therapy tradition, thoughts cause emotions. If you change the thought, the emotion will change. Therefore, this perspective assumes that changing the thoughts is the most effective way to go at it. Because then you change the whole, you stop the first domino from falling, so you don't get all the other consequences. In some cases that works, and in some cases that doesn't work. Because I know of a lot of people who work that strategy really well, and yet they still have fear come up. They still have these negative emotions come up. And so, and it's every person's choice. These aren't necessarily contradicting strategies. It's, can this experience I'm having be dealt with at the level of my thoughts? I'll try that first. If not, then it's time to feel some emotions. And the reason why this is tricky is that the thoughts and emotions are so closely intertwined. Sometimes it's hard to know what comes first. So thoughts, as I've said before, are almost like these cognitive filters. This is the meaning that we superimpose upon the world. You can see here, I've had a picture of glasses with prisms, colored prisms, because it's really hard to pull out emotions from those thoughts, because all of those thoughts are formed from years of emotional experiences. Sometimes they are from childhood. Sometimes they were formed during close relationships as adults. Sometimes they're from life events where everything happened a certain way, then a really impactful life event happens and you just see the world differently. So there can be multiple layers of it, but in my experience, I don't think that you can just extract emotions out of that. What is clear is that there are some thoughts that you can have about pain where you can reason yourself out of them. And then there are ones where you can try that, and then there are these deeper emotions that just come up anyway. And whenever the deeper emotions come up anyway, the emotions don't respond to cognitive restructuring because they're a different kind of animal. And regardless of which impacts what, which came first or which is stronger, both of them color your perception in the same way. So one of the first things I think it's important to ask yourself is how open are you to feeling a spectrum of emotions? And this could change day by day. It could change week by week, or maybe you're always at a certain point, like, no, I don't want to open that up. I don't really want to go there. Or perhaps you don't have control. The emotions come regardless of whether you want them or not. So you sort of may not feel like you have a choice at all. But if you don't feel open to feeling emotions, this is a case where I would suggest the much more gentle approaches of listening to music, watching animal videos is a way to slowly increase your tolerance for emotions. And what that does is it teaches you, oh, even whenever I feel sad, I can still feel happy after that. Or even whenever I listen to a piece of music that sort of takes me on this emotional roller coaster, I'm okay after that. Because one of the biggest fears involved in feeling emotions is the fear that the emotion will never end and that we can't escape from it. And that is rarely true. And yet that fear is still just so strong and prevents us from going into a lot of deeper emotions. But emotions always come and go. And I really do believe that there's relief on the other side of the emotions. So again, this is something I've talked about in previous presentations. The other part of emotions is they often come with sensations. They're embodied. I don't know how this works, honestly, but there is research showing that we feel different emotions in different parts of our bodies. And whenever we feel pain in different parts of our bodies, we have emotional responses that get tied in with those memories, those embodied memories. So for example, if you think about how you feel about your pain, what emotions, what thoughts come up, those memories, those reactions are part of the emotional memory in the body part that hurts. In that you start to see that part of your body that's painful as inseparable from the emotions and the interpretations you have of it. So that creates a different type of situation where you have mind-body pain, and yet you have a part of your body that hurts and you have emotions about it. You have feelings, you have a perspective, you have the body part no longer becomes neutral. You aren't just a disembodied brain, you are a human with all of these connections, and you have back pain that makes you bitter and angry and anxious, for example, or your arm pain creates sadness and anxiety. So there's a level of this where the emotions you have about a pain are to some degree imposed upon that body location. And I've discussed this in previous research meetups, but the best research I know on this is by a Finnish group where they asked, and they did multiple replications of this, so it's been repeated as well. They asked people where in their bodies do they feel different emotions? And these are heat maps where the places where people feel the emotions most are colored in yellow and red, and the places where they feel each emotion least are black, or in cases of numbness, they might be blue or light blue. And so one of the easiest, just for the case of explanation, one of the easiest examples of this is anger, where whenever you're angry, you know, your face scrunches up and your arms naturally get really tight. So this is a very obvious example of whenever you're embodying an emotional state, your body physically, even your motor movements reflect that emotional state. Therefore, in the case of anger, for example, even though it's a experience of your brain, you can't say that it's not related to your body, because your body is enacting, it is embodying that emotion through tension, and that tension, and not only the tension, your attention is drawn to different parts of your body. So for example, if we go back to here, anger and anxiety have a lot in common, but anxiety is definitely felt in the chest for a lot of people. Also in the tummy, butterflies in your stomach. You feel just a knot in the pit of your stomach. Anxiety can be felt in the throat, where you feel like your throat is just blocked up. So this is one of the reasons why whenever you have a strong emotional response, notice where in your body you feel it. And everyone will be different. But just by being aware of where in your body you're feeling the emotion, you might notice that it has similarities to where you feel pain or other symptoms, or it might be something that just comes and goes with just your state. Like for example, maybe you tend to feel most stress as an anxiety pattern, or as an anger pattern, or as a fear pattern. Or perhaps if you feel really depressed right now, you feel an absence of sensation throughout your body, or a numbness. That's also common too. There are even more elaborate, and because I'll be sending out all these slides, I'll also send out a few other papers on this, because I've shared this paper before, but there are other papers that go into even more expansion. For instance, even whenever, if you ask a woman or a man to describe how they feel in their body whenever they're empathizing with different kinds of people, you see different maps change for different people you interact with. So there's also a dimension of this where you can empathically become in tune with other people and you feel that in your body as well. It's really fascinating. One of the other tricky things about this that I feel like it's worth mentioning is that with chronic pain, as I said before, because sometimes there's neglect or a dissociation from the body parts that hurt, you may feel a loss of sensation or fuzzy sensation in the areas of your body where you feel pain. The other reason why I bring this up is to even draw your attention to how you feel pain whenever you aren't feeling strong emotions and whenever you are feeling strong emotions, because you can then study the impact or be curious about the impact of the emotions on your pain itself. So for example, if I have what I've noticed, and this is from, discussing this with people, the impact of, just as an example, since I have it here, if someone has arm pain, perhaps usually whenever they're more neutral, the arm pain feels very sharply localized. But whenever they're angry or anxious, it feels fuzzy almost. It feels like almost like the impact of the emotion makes the sensation more diffuse and fuzzy. So that's another way that you can study in yourself how pain and emotion interact, the sensation of pain in your body. So all of this stuff is possible. And in fact, as pain lasts longer and longer, you might notice different patterns in how specific your body feels. This is one of the reasons why I feel like regularly touching your body, it doesn't have to be massage, although it could be, but just reinforcing the boundaries of your body helps your brain maps stay very accurate. Because in people who have less connection with their bodies, the pain can start to actually become larger than the boundaries of their bodies. And this is specifically, I'm talking about research done in people with CRPS, where they start to feel like the pain or the body part is larger than it actually is. So you can actually see some body dysmorphia that can happen in some people. So it's very important to reinforce the boundaries of your body just with some